Siatta and Bendu visit Calvin's place in Congo Town. Already in his swimming trunks and a t-shirt, he welcomes the two sisters warmly and later leads them to the pool. Bendu and Siatta move to the changing area to put on their swimming suits. Soon, they settle down to enjoy jazz music and drinks. They try to relive the good old memories of teenage years. As Siatta begins to ask about old friends from the past, the conversation veers into the direction of war. The first topic to come up are about the exile and the missing ones. They recall how many people have gone missing, including a whole football team, whereas Siatta hopes that the boys would be found. Calvin believes it is highly unlikely because boys and men were often killed systematically during the war by warring factions. Siatta finds this unbelievable, wondering why they would just kill any man. Calvin insists that they did just that and quite often too. However, he asks that the boy or man can escape being killed if he knew someone that could vouch for him. Bendu lends her voice to Calvin's. She adds that another means to escape such kind of killing is to have special skills or join a faction. That way, they won't be among the targeted and powerless civilian. Siatta laments having heard so many terrible stories of traumatized people since she came back from the United States. She seems touched by the stories. Calvin, on the other hand, declares that he is neither moved by the people's war stories nor feels sorry for any of those people. Bendu is disturbed by Calvin's condescending language when he says those people. By the phrase, he means indigenous ethnic Liberians. When Siatta interrupts him by saying that the people under reference were victims rather than perpetrators of crimes, especially the women and children, Calvin counters by asking her how she knows. Insistently, he asks, "How do you know what the women and children did to make it through the war?" As Siatta stops to think about the question put to her, Calvin observes that some of the most vicious killers during the war were women would never think twice about slitting a man's throat or castrating him. Bendu's mind flies to Agnes, our co-director at PIP, as she puts on her sunglasses back. By the time Siatta would respond, she asked tensely, "So everyone did what they had to do?" Calvin agrees, while also pointing out that children, especially orphans, joined factions and took up arms. Calvin soon gets up and invites his guests to join him for swim. Moments after, Siatta calls after him, asking whether he had also had to kill during the war. He dives into the pool without answering. Hearing the question addressed to Calvin, Bendu glances sideways at her sister, who is looking straight at her. Siatta finally calls Bendu and asks whether she ever killed someone before she can say anything. Calvin is out of the pool and promptly takes up the conversation from where he left off. For him, indigenous ethnic Liberians deserve what they got in the war because of what they did to American Liberians in the 1980s. He recalls how President Tolbert, his cabinet members, and other officials were killed. how his own family members were tortured and how Benji was killed. For him, the notion that it was the parents and grandparents of these people who rejoiced in the streets celebrating the atrocities is unacceptable. Bendu is shocked at what comes out of Calvin's mouth, while he looks at the two sisters in a manner that challenges them to contradict him. He adds that indigenous Liberian intellectuals are also blaming the death from the war on the Congo people. On this, Siatta disagrees and dismisses the claim as ridiculous. Both agree that indigenous Liberians were the ones involved in intertribal killings. Bendu's interventions comes from a neutral perspective. She explains that people killed for all kinds of reasons, which include revenge, hatred, jealousy, self-defense, or simply to terrorize others and bring them under their control. There was hardly any ideological reason. Kirby cut in to note that in the beginning there was a purpose, which was to get President Doe out of power. After that was achieved, everyone just went crazy. Trying to bring the talk to a close, Bendu expresses the view that everyone deserves a little blame for the situation in the past and the one in the present. Siatta would not agree to that conclusion. She will not take the blame for anything, as no person should be punished for the sins of their ancestors. Like most of the people in the camp, Bendu runs out of the mud room where she was in due to gunshot that reverberated through the camp. Commander Cobra had fired the gunshots while testing his just loaded gun. He had tested it on two unlucky men from among his people after smoking marijuana. Everyone is paralyzed with fear. Ignoring this atmosphere of fear, he orders that the dead bodies be removed before he comes out of the tent into which he had just returned. When Betty returns to the room where she has been undergoing treatment for the wound she sustained during her capture, she asks her pulse, "Mamusu, why Cobra killed the man?" The nurse, a well-loved middle-aged woman, says she does not know but adds that Cobra acts that way, especially when under the influence of drug. Thereafter, Mamusum prompts Bendu to bring her broken arm for treatment. She nurses the wound, applied some medicine, and massages her hand and fingers, while Bendu cries. However, the pain in the hand soon begins to subside. Mamusu also advises Bendu not to allow Cobra to scare her, as he is fond of doing in order to look tough. She notes that Cobra is a good man when not on drug. Whenever he is on drug, he completely loses his mind and sometimes won't even remember what he did. According to her, he might even ask after those he just killed the following day. And when told what he did to them, he will feel bad. Bendu uses the opportunity of the interaction to ask Mamusu of their present location and learns that the place is called Duluma. She seeks to know how far the place is from Marovia, but her nurse has no answer. From further probing, she learns that Mamusu, her sisters, and two daughters were captured near Totota after running away from the village and brought to Duluma. Her husband and other able-bodied men were killed or taken away. In return, she tells Mamusu about the circumstances of her own capture and the whereabouts of her own parents. Shortly, Mamusu hears some movement around the mud room, then a loud knock on the door. Sensing trouble, She makes signs to Bendu to lie down covered in clothes and be quiet. As the knocking increases, she opens the door slightly to find out who the person is. Joseph and one other armed man are at the door to take Bendu to Commander Cobra. She gives excuses that the girl has been sick and is sleeping, but the men would have none of that. They want her not to make things difficult for them, and one of the two asks to just push her out of the doorway. Bendu rises to her feet and places herself between Mamusu and the aggressive man. With her arms akimbo in a daring gesture, she protests against the rough treatment of Mamusu. When they insist on taking Bedu to the commander, Mamusu asks whether he is in the oven or not. She is relieved by the negative answer and then ushers Bendu to the door. The men take Bendu to Commander Cobra's tent, where Samson, the one who broke her fingers, mounts guard. He is busy sharpening a large knife and looking like a madman with a long matted dreadlock. On sighting in, Bendu is fretting. Joseph, the gentler of the two men who took her from Moses' place, pushes her inside the tent gently. Commander Cobra has just finished his doje, a drug, and fiddly with some communication equipment when Bendu is pushed inside. After a long silence, Cobra finally asks why she insulted him and his people the previous night. When she realizes that he is talking about her sucking of teeth, she apologizes for doing so and claims it was unintentional. Cobra warns her that there is no room for disrespect in this group and tells her that she is lucky they did not kill her. As he continues testing the communication equipment, Bendu is seized with fear about her fate. She, however, heaves a sigh of relief when Commander Cobra tells her she would be staying with them in the camp and be safe because there are many factions of armed groups in the area. Looking at her for the first time, Cobra tells her that women are very important at the battlefront as she should therefore make herself useful to the group. Feeling safe in the demonstration of readiness to comply, she asks for what she can do. Cobra chuckles, calls Samson and informs him of Bendu's readiness to make herself useful. There and then, he asks him to take her as his new wife. Bendu is stunned and speechless, thinking about how she has been treated like a piece of property, owned and disposable just like that. Samson leads her through the camp to his own hut at knife points. He threatens to kill her if she gives him a hard time. He drags her away while women in the yard watch and shake their heads sadly in a gesture of sympathy. As soon as they enter his hut, Samson pushes his newly acquired wife on his dirty mattress, tears off her clothes and rapes her. As he pounds her and grunts like an animal, a voice begins to scream in Bendu's head. She becomes hysterical and begins to hit his face repeatedly. Despite a serious blow to one of his eyes, Samson manages to overpower her and continues to violate her. Bendu wails and wails under him.